Format's a little different today. Just gonna, I don't know, have a little bit of one-on-one time talk, a little bit about my experiences as an attorney, as a parent. I'd like for you to get to know me, and I would love if you guys would comment so I can get to know you. So I just came back from a client's house. I went to make a visit there because it was difficult for my client to leave the house. And beautiful new subdivision, beautiful new townhome. And I'm walking up to this beautiful home, and the tile walking into the vestibule passageway outside, in front of the door is so slippery, the outdoor tile. And I know what they did, the builder. I know because you walk in and it's the same tile. They put the indoor tile outside. So I have little tennis shoes on. I'm going to be out in the field today. And one of my assistants with me has, those sandals, like the Tory, whatever they are, sandals. So slippery, so slippery. I have to tell you, if a builder screws you like this, you have to make some noise. Because not only will you bust your ass, but somebody, a poor delivery person who's just trying to do their job is going to hurt themselves. And I don't mean hurt themselves like spraining their ankle. I mean like fracture a femur or something like this. Because when you have indoor tile that they know should never have been used out there, but they're cheap as hell, and they don't put the right exterior tile, that is a prescription for disaster. So you really need to talk to, if you really need to do something, if you have this kind of tile, and you're not in a position where, a builder is the one that's at fault, then you need to take matters into your own hands. Go to Home Depot. They have something that you can put, you ask people there obviously, but it has like a sand, it has a grit on it that will give you a better coefficient of friction. But you can't just allow the entranceway to your home where you invite people and where you yourself are coming in and out in Florida in the rain to be that slippery. It's not right. The other thing I will tell you is this. Not only sometimes do they put interior tile on the outside by a doorway, but some of these builders have the balls to put it around a pool. And there's no way to control children from never running around a pool. So that's a concussion. That is a fractured mandible. That is the kind of thing where people go flying. Again, interior tile outside is not a sprain. This is a more serious injury. Even if you had adults that you were inviting over, for a night of hanging out entertainment, you can't have tile that is this slippery, even when it's just humidity. Because I don't know how, people in general feel, but if somebody slipped on something like that in my home when I knew, and they really hurt themselves, I would have a really difficult time dealing with myself, because I would not want to have that on my conscience, essentially. So if you have a situation like that where they have put interior tile, I can't imagine that it's an ignorant move. I can't, because they know that it's interior tile designed for the interior. I have to imagine that it is a builder being cheap or a person being cheap. If somebody has put you in that situation, or if you have somebody in your home who thought that it was a good idea and now you realize it's not, take action. Take action to get that tile removed. Certainly, the way that I look at things is influenced by what I see every day at work. Everybody looks at the world a little differently from their experiences, particularly from work experiences, because you spend so much time at work. So when I roll up to somebody's house and I see a situation where somebody can get hurt, maybe they see me as a little obnoxious because I'm mentioning this more than once, but I'm thinking about what I've experienced. Like, I'm thinking about somebody whose bone has come through the skin. I'm thinking about somebody who hasn't been able to work. I'm thinking about somebody who had a problem that is extremely painful and is setting the back in their life in general, and maybe could have been avoided. And so I know people say you can't avoid, I'm not saying you can avoid all danger. I'm not saying that risk in some situations is not inevitable, but there are a lot of risks that you don't have to take. And for me, because I have seen the outcome that is quite painful and quite sad in many people's lives. For me, some risk can and should be, if not completely avoided, modified. Like, I talked a lot about sleepovers in one of my videos. I was a prosecutor at the state attorney's office, seeing all kinds of sex crimes. That's only at the beginning of my career for like 5 years. But after that, I've read hundreds of thousands of medical records. I'm not a doctor, but sometimes I know a lot of the medical terminology. And when you read hundreds of thousands of medical records, sometimes you're not even looking for that. You're not looking for the pattern of abuse. You're not looking for something terrible that's happened in somebody's life. You're only looking for whether or not the neck injury they had here, you can prove that they never had that neck injury before, and you're combing their records from years before. And what you find is incredible, what people have passed through, the kind of suffering that can be caused by an event like a sex abuse or somebody touching them 1, 2, 3, 8, and who knows how many times. And these are things that people harbor, but they are things that come out in the medical records. So since I have seen on so many occasions these things surface in medical records, I'm cognizant of the fact that it's much more common than people realize. It's not just the pastor who's sitting uncomfortably close to you, or the jokes about the priest, or some weirdo who contacts kids online. It's not just that. It's people's brother, uncle, cousin, and children are often not in a position to understand, especially young people, to understand their sexuality, to understand when somebody, the balance of power, if somebody can take advantage of them. They're not in a position to really defend themselves. I know that when I look at these records, that it happens so much more often in circumstances that nobody would really think it would happen. So I did the best I could with my children, my son and my daughter, to limit the opportunities for those kinds of things that are preventable to happen. And naturally, I did let them go to, other people's houses. I did let them go to sleepovers. Well, I didn't let them stay all night. They would attend. If the whole team was there, they would attend. And those parents, I barely know some of these damn parents, okay? I've known them sitting on the sideline. In the beginning, some of them I did get to know very well, but in the beginning, you don't know them. And so they knew that I was coming. They didn't know exactly what time. Am I coming at noon, at midnight? Am I coming at 1:30? Sometimes I was, driving from West Tampa to Fish Hawk at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I'm coming. And they're coming in with me, and they know that. So there was some measure for me of comfort in that regard. There are also safety precautions, obviously, that when you entrust your child to somebody else, that you have to think about. I don't like children around the pool not supervised. I think it's bullshit. I think it's ridiculous. And so when I take my child to a teen gathering and I say to the mother, hey, I usually don't leave them overnight. He's 13. The whole team is going. I have to live with my daughter. I can't come get him. So I'm going to ask you to please make sure that they're not unsupervised and, with a pool. So when I find out later that the mother not only doesn't supervise them, but that the whole group went down to a community pool and that nobody's supervising them. And then later on that night, the band of 13-year-olds is playing ding dong ditching in the neighborhood. One of those 13-year-olds was 6'1". What would you do if somebody knocked on your door at 1 o'clock in the morning and you see a 6'1" person behind a bush in your house? So, it's funny because the couple of times that when they were young, I let my guard down, stuff like that happens. And so you think that you can trust somebody to use their, to be sensible. You think that you can trust somebody to supervise them, because I would supervise somebody else's child even more closely than my own. You don't know, and you can't always. And I'm not saying that you should never allow them to do things like that, but I think like anything in life, we have to take risks. But if you limit the risk, you limit the amount of times that you take the risk, and you think very carefully about who you're trusting your child with, then you limit the opportunities for harm. Last night on Jimmy Fallon, it was actress Elizabeth Makes who was talking about sleepover camps. And she said, oh, you miss your children, but then when you're going to brunch, you forget about all kinds of bullshit like that. Sleepover camp, my child in an environment where I know nothing really about what is taking place. I know nothing about who is going to be around them as they go to sleep, as they're by a lake, nothing. To me, that is never a risk that I would take. That is not a measured risk. I don't care how many people have been to the camp. You don't know who is with your child there. You don't know exactly how the supervision is. And so, to me, the idea of sending my child to a camp is just, I can't, untenable. I couldn't think about it. And they would never go another place for a sleepover camp. I'm 60 years old now, and my children are 24 and almost 21. They're in college, and I miss them on a regular basis. And I miss them being, dependably at home, because they're in and out of your home at that time. Why waste precious time you're going to send your kid away for a week? What? No. I mean, this is in summer when you have an opportunity to try. I'm a working person. I certainly felt guilty when I couldn't be home and they were bored during summer. But to send them away for a week, when you have nights with them, when there are things you can do with them, and to put them potentially in harm's way, not me. Not me. My son did not have his license at 16. He ended up getting his license at 17. He was more mature then. And for some reason, a bunch of his friends were not dying to get their licenses when they were 16. That was just his group. One kid actually told me, my mom can drive me. I don't have to worry about dying. He was a dramatic kid. But I know that when he started driving, what propelled me to go ahead and get him his own car or when he became driving age, what propelled me to get him his own car is that I had the 360 Live, and I was watching the car that he was in. I was watching the speed he was going, and it was like 90 miles an hour, and it was not on an interstate even. And it was a young girl, one of his first girlfriends. And so when she came to my house, I said, Mamita, what? You were going really fast. What was happening? Were you getting chased by bad people? Like, what is happening? I wasn't going to be nasty to her, but the last damn time he's going to get in the car with her. And she goes, I just like to drive past, my mom doesn't like it, but, oh, hell no. I said to myself, okay, at this point, and you know your child. I definitely can depend on my son more than I can depend on any of his friends. So, we put getting his car into high gear at that point because I felt like he's definitely more sane. Now, he got a big truck. You have to be worried about it. Don't ever, let your kid convince you to put these ridiculous tires on a truck or any of that horse shit, because you have now changed the balance of power that engineers have derived when you put these big tires on those trucks, and they're much easier to flip. They're much easier to flip when they're driving, if they're driving a little too fast, if they're coming around a curve, if they're not estimating right, even if they're, you see these ridiculous people with these amped up, souped up trucks, and you look in there and they're like 35, and you're thinking, okay, somebody's stuck in 15-year-old mentality or something, that they think that's cool, dude, you're a little too old to be driving the Hot Wheels, let it go. But, regardless of who you are, this changes the balance of this changes the stability. It changes the entire dynamic of the vehicle. And engineers have decided where the center of balance should be. They've designed this supposedly so that it doesn't flip, and now you changed it to put yourself in the precarious position where it will. So he get a regular, large truck, and of course we live 4 blocks from this high school, so he could be cool, and I didn't have to worry for a little while. But naturally, in the beginning, I wanted to make sure that he was driving at a certain circumference. He became, he understood where he was going. They're in a different position nowadays than we were growing up. I didn't have, anything telling me where to go. I didn't have Waze. I didn't have Google Maps. We were looking down at a piece of paper. We didn't know where we were going. We printed the directions somewhere. But they can be distracted by a lot of things. They're changing their music. They're looking down. So you want them to be able to know exactly a certain area and then broaden it to me, as opposed to just giving them the keys and say, hey, you're driving now, you go wherever you want. They also don't know, like literally, they're going to follow Waze or Google or whatever. They're gonna follow their phone no matter where it takes them. Young people at that age, they have no concept of the idea that you should take a route that is not going to take you through a neighborhood where maybe crack is readily available if you stop too long at the intersection. They have no concept of that. So now you're old enough. You're in college. You're old enough to go places, and you're gonna go. You're gonna travel. You're gonna go to New Orleans. You're gonna go to Mardi Gras. You're gonna go to something like that, and they oftentimes don't have any real understanding that if you go off the beaten path in any big city, if you go off the beaten path, you're putting yourself in harm's way. So that sort of ordinary common sense is not something that this generation does not have. So tired of hearing people, this generation, well, maybe it's your fault. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you're the ones that didn't teach them. Hello? I mean, is it their upbringing is whose fault? Maybe some of the people who are criticizing them. I have plenty of people work in my office who are insanely driven, who are millennials, or but the more common sense, the more ordinary things like that. Maybe it's important for us to take a few minutes, even if they roll their eyes or they want to hear it. You're still going to be the voice in their head when you're not there. So maybe we need to take a few minutes. Say, hey, you're going to be traveling big cities, places that you're not familiar with. Just because you have the most direct route doesn't mean it's the safest. You should take a look at some other resources before you go. There are plenty of places that you can look. If you're going overseas, you can look at, you can look at, there's all kinds of statistics that embassies put out. If you're going to be going here in the States, there are things that they have the world at their fingertips on their phone. Well, my phone is, but they have the world at their fingertips on their phone. They can look up an area. They can look up a place. They can look up, crime around that area. There's plenty of apps. There's so much information. We should teach them to use that information to serve their common sense. Why does common sense, I break out of a hole outside? Okay, slow clap for you. Keep rotating on that. See how that helps society. I don't know. But why can't people accept that just because you don't know, you got to use the technology? That we can teach our children how to use the technology to serve their common sense. Because, they may know more about technology. You may know more about common sense or ordinary things they haven't encountered. And if you can encourage them to look for things that can serve that common sense. Hey, you're going to go to this city, do a little investigation. How would you investigate? Or I like to ask sometimes, If I'm going to go someplace, son, daughter, if I'm going to go someplace and I'm concerned about, being, making sure I'm safe, what resources would you use? What can you think of that I could check out? Sometimes you don't have to hit people over the head all the time with some sort of thought or advice or knowledge. There are other ways to talk to people about things. So a lot of times, everybody's so obsessed with beating their chest. Like if I see one more video about when we were whatever nostalgic, we were the generation that we were whatever. Okay. Do you know that people remember what's convenient? When I was graduating from high school, there was a Time magazine article that talked about how horrible our generation was going to be. We were called, people don't remember, the me generation. Everything about me. I want to work. I want to make money for me. And the poster child for that, if you remember Michael J. Fox on Family Ties, for people who are old enough to remember that show, his dad was a beatnik from the 60s who was about love and being a hippie. And Michael J. Fox carried a picture of Ronald Reagan, and he was all about finance and stocks and being a business person. He represented our time. Our time was about money and making it work and working long hours. Is it odd that the next generation then wants more flexibility, wants more balance? Were some of us so caught up with work that, our children said, not me? These are questions that people don't ask themselves because they're busy talking so much about their own upbringing and being nostalgic about their own things because nobody likes change. I feel like I have a unique perspective on that because I chose not to have children till later and till I was ready, and I was in my 40s. So I have, I wanted flexibility. I wanted to be there with them, which is not easy to be a business owner and balance all that. But that was my desire. And so the parents that I speak to, they're a little younger than I am, maybe 10 years. And so I have a different perspective about it because I just think that when I look back at my generation and the people that I know who are so high on, on rotating on this and not being open to looking at some of the very positive things that are happening in this generation, that it seals them off. So their ability to give advice, their ability to talk openly with their kids, is limited. You don't have to like their music to listen to it. Don't you want to know what your kids are being influenced by? Is there an age when you don't care? There's never an age I don't care. I want to know what they're being influenced by and what they like to the day they die. And I will try to learn the words of every single song that they like so that I know, what kind of cultural influences are happening with them, and so that I can be relevant to them, with them, and so that I can continue to have some other conversation. It doesn't mean that you don't have to like things from before. It doesn't mean you have to abandon other things. It just means that you have a wider palette. It just means that you can speak to more people. I tried this case with this other lawyer friend of mine, okay? He would not shut up in the voir dire about Back to the Future. These people didn't know what Back to the Future was. They're 40 years old. They were born that year. They don't know about that. I mean, do people who graduated from high school in the 80s, do they know every movie from the 50s? Does this mean that people who are in their 40s are, culturally screwed just because they don't know your movies? It does not. Okay, they didn't understand a bunch of this guy's references because he can't adapt. Is that their fault? Are they a bad generation because he couldn't adapt? No, culture changes. So, our way to communicate has to change as parents, Certainly when I'm at work as a boss, I have to be able to communicate, because if you're going to be a boss, you have to communicate with people, hopefully inspire them. They inspire you. That's like a two-way thing for sure, if you have good people who work with you. And when you pick a jury as an attorney, like, you're getting to know people. If you only have a couple hours to get to know 30 or 40 people to see if you can figure out who's going to be fundamentally unfair to your client. So if you can't communicate with them in a way that they would like to communicate, not in a way you want to communicate, but in a way they would like to communicate, then you're not going to get to know them, and you're not going to do your client a good service, because you're going to miss somebody who ends up on the jury who's not going to be fair. And so I just think that too many people, once you say like a mantra over and over again, everybody goes, oh, yeah, they all agree with it, or sometimes that kind of narrows your focus, narrows your mindset. I don't think that's ever a good thing. If you're a parent who has wanted to be a little more cautious, but you have felt like pressured or unsure and have allowed your kids to do things that you weren't comfortable with. I think we've all done that, right? Like every time your child asks you to do something, it presents a new challenge for you, because you're trying to be reasonable but cautious and not choke them. You're trying to walk that balance tightrope. But if you've allowed them to do things and then you don't want them to do them anymore, I think you really have to be honest. Sometimes I tell my kids, I'm not a plant. I'm a person. I have feelings too. And, it's not only how you feel, it's about how I feel. And I continue to learn. So I don't think there's anything wrong. They're not going to like what the hell you're saying anyway, because if you're telling them no, who likes that? Nobody likes that. But if you're honest and you say, the last time I let you go, there were these things that made me uncomfortable. And I am thinking about it and I'm reflecting on it. I think that was probably the wrong move for me, the wrong move for you. And I want to make sure that I continue to learn, and that anything I learn, I apply. I have learned that that wasn't a good idea. It wasn't a good environment for you. It didn't turn out the way it should have, and I do not want you to go. They're going to be pissed no matter what. But you might as well just be honest about it, and don't try to make like a false distinction, because you're going to encounter that same situation again, and they're going to go, what? Another exception to the rule? No. Guess what? The rules change. The rules change. Yesterday at work, somebody said to me, well, you said that that was a good idea when we met last time. I have it in the notes 3 years ago. 3 years ago? I change. I grow. The rules change as the environment changes. The rules change as somebody's inner environment changes as they learn. Things change. And that's not a bad lesson for children to learn. You are consistently going to love them. You are consistently going to have rules, and you are consistently going to have boundaries. But rules and boundaries will change as new information is received. If I let you go places and now I get new information that people are doing things that I think are unacceptable there, then I might change the boundary. Or if I find out that you were doing something wrong, or that I wouldn't have appreciated, or that I didn't know about, my boundaries might change. So, and there's so many situations of that. You let me go out with so-and-so. Well, yeah. And then I saw that they were driving 90 miles an hour. You're not going with them anymore. Things, and I think it's important to say things not just in the moment or not just in anger, but I think it is important to say things clearly in ways that people can remember, when you're not around. As information is received, things change. That will happen in your work life, in your marital life, and it's happening today. New information has changed the rules and the boundaries. My kids have a lot of jokes about me losing my cool, me throwing a chancleta at them, because that's what we do. We lose our minds at being Latin. About me being more strict than other parents were. But now that they're older and we continue to have, frank, open conversations, there's three things that I think my perspective for me has rewarded me. Number one, they've come through with their years completely safe, completely unscathed. Nobody's touched them. They didn't get any car accidents. They didn't break any bones. They were never arrested. They have come through these years completely unscathed, and that's number one. Number two, I feel extremely close to both of them. I feel like I can count the two of them as two of the closest people, the almost best friends to me in my life. And I know a lot of people would love that. And I am grateful for it every minute, every waking minute of every day. And the third thing is, now that they are, obviously independent, young adults, well, they're in college, not completely independent, but, independent in terms of their movement and all that. Now that we have had some more open conversations about it, sometimes, I remember asking each one of them, it's been a while since we talked about this, so I don't know if they'll remember, but I certainly do. And I said to them, on some level, when you couldn't go places or stay the night, whatever, and other people could, on some level, even if you were mad or you wanted to go, on some level, at some point, did you ever feel like we were more involved, or that we cared so much for you, or that we had thoughts that were more careful than some of your other friends' parents who let them do whatever the hell they wanted? To me, that equates with them feeling more loved. And so, to me, from my perspective, at least with my experience with my two, I've had some great success. And I know other people have had success in other ways. And I want to hear all about that too. So please comment below. And if there's anything else that you want to chat about, let me know.